Hi, everyone. Good evening and welcome to Writers Unplugged. This series is a chance to hear from your favorite writers or new to you writers in conversation, as if you were eavesdropping on them in a coffee shop. My name is Laura Maylene Walter, and I'm the Ohio Center for the Book Fellow at Cleveland Public Library, where I host the Page Count podcast. I'm filling in for Jen Jumba tonight. Before we get started, I want to mention a few housekeeping notes. To find out who else is visiting Writers Unplugged, both virtually and in person, visit cpl.org/unplugged. During this conversation, if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat and we'll do our best to get to them near the end. And finally, Maxback's Books on Coventry, our wonderful independent bookstore, has copies of tonight's guest books for sale. So be sure to support Maxbacks and buy a copy of the book. And now I'd like to introduce our guest. Heather Gudenkauf is the Edgar Award nominated New York Times and USA Today bestselling author of 10 novels. Her critically acclaimed books have been published in over 20 countries and have been included in many best of lists, including those put out by the New York Times, the Washington Post, Amazon, and Goodreads. Her latest novel, Everyone is Watching, was just released last month. So we're really excited to speak with Heather Gudenkauf tonight. Heather, welcome to Writers Unplugged, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you. I'm thrilled to be here with you.
Well, this book is a dark and fun ride for sure. It surrounds a kind of mysterious and dangerous reality TV show that thrusts the competitors into some quite risky and dark situations with a prize of $10 million. So I believe it's described in a blurb as Big Brother meets Clue. I also saw a lot of like Squid Game in there, which was really interesting. So I thought we could start by just tell us a little bit more about the story. And I'm really curious what inspired you to write this book.
Sure. So yeah, it's Everyone is Watching. It's the story of 5 strangers who all receive an invitation to take part in this wild, over-the-top, brand new reality television series called One Lucky Winner. And they are all brought to this remote location in wine country, California. And once they get there, they're cut off for all communication with the outside world. Their cell phones are taken away. They can't leave the estate. They have to sign something to say that they will not communicate with anybody in the outside world. And then the games begin. And then once they start playing, taking these challenges and competing against each other, the challenges become more and more dangerous, even deadly. And as they're playing, some secrets that they had really hoped would never see the light of day start bubbling up to the surface. And the entire world is watching while this is happening. And so things aren't quite going as planned, and they really begin to ask themselves, what will they truly do for $10 million? What kind of people are they? And is it worth it? And so, so that in a nutshell is what Everyone is Watching is about. As for where I got the idea for it, I think the easy answer is, I'm a big fan of the TV show Survivor, and I watched that since the beginning. I think it's been on for like 25, 26 years now. And it is, at the time, it was really groundbreaking and exciting and kind of very different. And it really pushed the envelope for what we knew of as reality TV back in the day. And I thought it would be really fun to build one from the ground up and just make everything darker and more dangerous and see where it took me.
And in wine country too. So
in wine country, because everything's better with wine.
With a little danger and possibly risking your life, when you've got wine.
Right.
That's really interesting, Survivor. I have to say, gosh, because your book made me think a lot about reality TV. And I mean, I feel I didn't even realize how much I have watched reality TV over the years. And I was never actually a big, I just never came across Survivor that much. So I didn't know a ton about it. But I remember this is dating me, but the early days of like Big Brother, which I haven't seen that show in years, but I remember being really fascinated by the psychological aspect of it, of putting strangers in a house and seeing how they, you know, sometimes commit what seems like almost psychological warfare to try to like get ahead and trick each other. And I mean, there's definitely some of that in your book for sure. But yeah, it made me think of the history of reality TV and how much it has changed and how today's iterations are so different. Do you, before we get more into the book, what's your relationship to reality TV like now? Do you watch any of the other shows, that the huge amount of avalanche of shows that have been coming out?
Yeah, there's so much. I mean, everywhere you look, it's the thing to do, this reality TV tsunami. You know, for me, I've always been drawn to the more of the physical challenges that also, of course, include the mental challenges. So Survivor, Alone, which is about where people are dropped into the middle of nowhere and they just have to survive for the longest. Those really fascinate me as well. I'm not so much into the housewife reality shows or The Bachelor. They stress me out, and because I think that those shows really stress me out because there is so much of that mental manipulation in them, which, you know, is really important to reality TV, but it can be hard to watch in that sense. So, and I love all the cooking shows. If we're talking reality TV, I'm a big fan of all those. Yeah.
This is what I love about talking to writers, because you're talking about, like, for example, a show like The Bachelor stressing you out, which I understand why these things would stress you out. But then you write this book where, of course, people's lives are at risk. And I love that. I don't know if you feel this way, but I think as a writer, the fact that you're controlling the world can make it a little less stressful. Is that how you feel, or how do you approach writing about something with really high stakes, like in your book?
Yeah, absolutely. I think having that control for me is key. Because, you know, I'm so invested in the characters I create. You really get to know them. You spend so much time exploring and discovering them on the page. They, in a weird way, become like family to you, even though many of the characters in this book are quite detestable. You know, we're just not the best people. But I think controlling it and kind of knowing where it's going to go, and who's going to be okay and who's going to get their just desserts. And I think having that knowledge makes it a little bit easier moving through the book.
Yeah.
For me.
It's just, you know, playing God. That's all we want to do as writers, right?
That's right.
There's nothing
we don't ask for much.
No. Well, let's talk about your characters a bit. So you did this interesting thing that seems to be a play on kind of reality TV shows also in general, but you've assigned them, or the show, I guess, assigns them archetypes. So we've got one known as the best friend, we've got the confidant, the executive, the senator, and the boyfriend. So these are their kind of archetypes. Can you talk about your decision to do that? And did you know from the start that you had these roles for the show and the book that you wanted to fill, or did that develop over time?
That really developed. I really liked the idea of naming the character based on some that were very obvious and some that archetypes that we had to discover what it meant as the story unfolded. But it really came to me over time, because as I wrote this book, some of the characters that I started and had as contestants in the show completely changed as I wrote the book. And so much changed in this book. So much revision went into it, because, you know, as we talked about, you get to know the characters on the page, and finding the right contestants for this book was really important, and it took time. It took time for me. So some of the characters that I had written initially were completely cut from the book. New ones were added in. Some were, you know, modified as I went along. And I really found what their final moniker would be as the story developed. So that, changed throughout the book as well.
It's really interesting. I will definitely want to ask later about your revision process for this book, because I'm always curious about revision. But before we get there, I'm also, I'm really interested in multi-point of view books. So this novel has several points of view. Not all the contestants get a point of view. And in addition to the contestants, we have kind of like a showrunner host. We have a kind of a secretive person behind the scenes running it. Can you talk a bit about your choice of who got a point of view in the book, and how you came to that decision of who would have a direct voice in the novel?
Yeah, that's a really good question, in the sense that, that again is really something that I discovered as I went along.
Yeah.
When I first started, so the points of view that I ended up on is Mare, who is a mom from Iowa, a Midwest mom, who has a daughter with a life-threatening illness, and she's broke. She has no health insurance, and she's desperate for money. So we learned pretty quickly what her motivations for taking part in this show. If anybody, she could use that $10 million. So, I really connected to her as a mom, and knew I wanted her voice throughout the story. I knew I wanted the assistant's voice, who is Fern, because she's kind of the downtrodden, lowly, I'm putting that in quotes. She's treated very poorly by her boss, and I really wanted to follow her throughout the story, because we see her change quite a bit as a character. One of the characters that started with a point of view but didn't end up with one is Samuel, who's also known as the boyfriend. He's an attorney from Atlanta, and I started the book and got quite far with him as a voice in the book, and ended up kind of settling on that it was the women's voices in the book that seemed to take hold for me. So he of course remained a character in the book, and a very important one throughout the story, but his perspective was taken away. So sorry, Samuel, he's kind of on the back burner in that way. And I also had the voice of the confidant, who's a psychiatrist, kind of self-help guru from San Francisco, and she really emerged as a strong voice in the story as well. So that stuck. And then I included the point of view of the audience. When any reality show, if you want to know what people are really thinking, you go and go to the comment section of any thread that talks about them. And we get some very honest keyboard warriors on how they feel about things. And so that's present throughout the book as well.
Yeah, I thought that was fun. I enjoyed that, because you'll see. So this show, we should tell viewers who have not yet read the book, it isn't something really produced that will appear Tuesday night at 7, right? It is streamed live online, and it could be, I think people don't even get a lot of advance notice. Like, they just might go live for a channel in the middle of the night, but it is such a tantalizing show that millions of people are watching. And so when we're seeing the audience feedback, we're seeing it like in the chat thread on the streaming video of how people are responding, including their screen names and all of that. So yeah, I thought that was a really interesting touch. Did you always plan on having it be like a chat thread, and to add that layer of making us feel like we're kind of with them watching the show, or is that something that also developed over time?
Yeah, no, that was really in the initial plans, and how it actually unfolded, shifted, and who ended up getting a voice in the chat room, or the chats as well, kind of shifted as we went, because as we read, as the reader, is going through the book, they realize as well that some of the people who are watching the show and commenting have connections to some of the players in the show.
Yeah.
And they recognize, or they might have lived in the same building at some point. And so they have that kind of familiarity. But we get comments from people who, of course, have no connection except as a viewer. And they obviously give their opinions as well. And I just thought that was a really important part of this story, because I think we see it so much, whether it be with reality TV or pop culture in general, how we as viewers kind of feel like we have an ownership over those people we see in the media or in pop culture, and that we have a right to share our opinions, whatever they may be, in whatever way we feel we want to, whether it's accurate or not. And we do that with everything. We do that with pop culture, reality show. We do it with the royals. It's a really good example with everything that was going on with Princess Kate, and before people really knew about her health issues. I mean, everybody was commenting about where she was and what that meant. And another a good example of this, I think, or bad example, and Ohio being a Big Ten state as well, I think of women's basketball and how, if you've been following that at all, like I have as an Iowa Hawkeye fan, women's basketball has just taken off this past couple of years. And the comments on these young women coming from social media about the way they look, the way they play, their demeanor on and off the court, and all these women want to do is play basketball.
Yeah.
And I couldn't stand the fact that we were doing this to these very strong, powerful, talented young women across the nation who were finding their strength in playing basketball. So that was just another really extreme example of,
yeah, absolutely. They are literally at the top of their games, of their athletic abilities, and they're still being judged in this way. Like, you can't, that as a woman, that it's just like you're reduced to this. Yeah.
People are commenting on the way they look. I'm like, but look at how they're playing basketball.
What does that have to do with anything? Yeah. No, agreed. I completely agree. Well, since you just talked a bit about kind of the public's insatiable desire for, I don't know, gossip and following famous people and kind of tracking them down and reducing them to objects. But with all that said, I wonder if One Lucky Winner were a real show, would you be tuning in?
But I would be so stressed out. No, I think I would. I think I'd be super curious.
Yeah.
Super curious, and it is one of the, on its face is a very physical show where they're doing races and obstacle courses, and that would be something I would really vibe with, I think. And so I would be not tuning in. However, if I got an alert at 2 a.m., I don't know, because I really like my sleep. But, in this book, people are getting alerts that they're going live, or, something big's happening at that time.
Right.
But I did ask somebody about that. I was talking to a group of readers, and they mentioned, Love is Blind is another reality show that's been popular. I understand. I've never seen it. But they said, yes, if they got an alert that Love is Blind was coming on live at midnight, they would be up. Absolutely.
Wow.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah, people have a hunger for it. That's fascinating. Oh my goodness. Well, and I will say, speaking of being stressed out, I think we don't want to spoil anything in the book, but one of the challenges involving water really stressed me out. I don't know how much. Do you want to share an example of one of the challenges, or do you prefer to kind of keep that?
No, I think I can. We can talk about the water challenge. I think that's a fun one. So, and there's so much more to it about why that challenge is chosen, and why the contestants are put through that particular challenge as well. But for this one, they're asked to jump into a lake and through a small hole in they have this big setup, and they have to swim in order to gather these little tokens, I'll call them, and they have to get as many as they can in order to win an advantage in the game. And people are doing whatever they can in order to win, whether that means climbing over the backs underneath the water of their contestants. And more than one contestant really struggles with that challenge, and they're sabotaging each other. They're pushing their limits in order to get this $10 million, because we know that each of the characters has what they feel like a very compelling reason that why they need the money. And as we learn more and more about each character, about what that means for them, we as readers, like the viewers do, begin to pass judgments on these characters and what they're really like as people.
Yeah, and I thought it was really interesting because this is, without saying too much, it's not your regular reality show. And when they're getting ready to start the water challenge, a few of them are asking questions like, well, are there divers for safety, or where are these precautions and where are these precautions? And those precautions don't really seem to exist. And so it's this really interesting tension of, if you're going on a show like this, you probably assume you're going to be protected. But what if you're not? And where do you draw the line? Like where? So that was always a great line of tension of, with each character. Some of them are maybe more reluctant than others, or they're more quickly willing to draw the line, or they're not. And I think having the stakes for those characters is so important. Like Mare, you had mentioned, has a sick child and really intense medical care. And it kind of made me think of Breaking Bad in that way, which I don't know if you watch that show, but
yeah, great show.
Yeah. I mean, the show would not have existed if we had healthcare for Walter White's cancer and he didn't have to worry about making money for his family. And so it made me think of that as well. Like Mare might not be the kind of person, she's a mother, to put herself at this risk. But for the $10 million, which she needs for her daughter. So yeah, I think the stakes are so important. And this also made me think of, when I was thinking of stakes, Squid Game, the show, you can't get higher stakes than that, right? That it seems like everyone's dying in the game. And I did not watch, I know there was some kind of Squid Game like reality spinoff. I don't know if you watched that, but okay. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe it was good, but I didn't watch it because I thought, well, I don't really want to just watch. I mean, I don't want to watch real people die. I feel like I'm terrified of that. I don't want to watch that. But, the fictional show, the stakes were so high that's why people were tuning in. And if you kind of remove that and make it another like physical challenge show, where are the special stakes? So I just thought that was interesting, like to think about writing a book, especially a thriller like you write, and to have those stakes in place is so important.
Yeah, because it was such a fine line, because it's a fast-paced thriller. You want readers to tune in, you want readers to be invested in the characters, but not so far over the top, which it is an over the top reality show. But I think what we're finding, or what I'm seeing, is that over the years, how reality shows have keep pushing the limits and manipulating the characters or the cast into doing what they want them to do, or putting them in these, if not deadly situations, but precarious, like mentally, like putting them in these really fraught situations where they, if physically they're not being crushed, their souls might be being crushed. And it's a very hard thing to watch sometimes when we see that on television these days. And I'm not familiar with this reality show at all, but I was thinking, okay, I have to go over the top, bigger than big, and have this prize of $10 million. There is apparently a new reality show coming out. It's, I think, a YouTube one, where the prize is like $5 million now.
Yeah.
And the contestants do some pretty wild over the top challenges as well. So I just think it just keeps pushing and pushing. And it kind of reminds me of back in the gladiator days, with, lion in the the ring
Yep.
or
For
whatever.
all for
Yeah.
our entertainment, absolutely.
All for
Yeah.
entertainment.
Yeah, I've read a lot about different shows and what I mean they do as in your book, it's a real thing. They take away all your phone. You can't really have contact
Mm-hmm.
with the outside world. Your environment's very controlled, out of your own control. They control when you sleep, when you eat, maybe ply you with alcohol. I know there have been lawsuits on some reality shows about the contestants claim they didn't have access to food and water. And so it's just a horrifying
Right.
to to have to create that fabricated environment to get the drama up and to get the entertainment. So it is wild. I could see why you were drawn to writing a thriller about it.
Yeah.
Absolutely, because it's just a lot of human drama that a lot of us experience in real life just through watching these TV shows.
Right.
Guilty pleasure or not. So I feel like I'm talking a lot about reality TV and TV shows.
Mm-hmm.
Are there other books that either inspired you or that you thought of in the same vein as this book that you might want to talk about that either helped you out along the way or that you knew things to think about?
Yeah, and it's there are some, and I'm gonna draw a blank on some of
Yeah, I
the
know it's always
names
hard.
off the top of my head. I've written an article about them. Like, there are so many great books out there. There's one that comes to mind, and I don't want to say too much about it because it will give away some spoilers. Just saying too much, but if you read, I think it's called The Last One by Will Dean.
Okay.
It's a great book. Great book. That readers really need to check out. The luckiest one alive, I think, is another one. Um, and there's another one called The Last One by another author that is also in the same vein of a reality show. So there's so much out there. And, I watched an inordinate amount of reality television.
Mm-hmm.
As I was researching this book, my husband would walk by my office and say, "What are you doing?" I was glued to my
Research,
screen.
obviously.
Research,
Work.
obviously. Yeah. But I think, regardless of books about reality TV that are thrillers, and there's a couple great ones that have just come out as well. One by Claire McIntosh just hit the shelves, and one by Ruth Ware comes out this summer as well, that all kind of are in that vein. But just any book, and I love thrillers, that really brings the characters on edge, and the reader together. There's so many authors I admire and adore. Mary Kubica has a new one called She's Not Sorry, which
Mm.
is a fab, nothing to do with reality TV, but just a
Yeah.
great, great thriller. The New Couple in 5B by Lisa Unger is another one that I've really loved.
Mm-hmm.
I've got a couple right here that I've been reading. Fun Young Rich Widows by Kimberly Bell, Lane Fargo, Kate Houlihan, and Vanessa Lilly. This group of four, they put together this fabulous story about four women who lose their husbands in the same plane crash, and
Mm-hmm.
then the drama that goes with that. Lisa Scottolini, The Truth About the Devlins, is another one that's been really fun to read. She's a favorite of mine. And then I'll grab one more. This one comes out this summer, but by Kara Ruda, Under the Palms, which is a really kind of oh gosh, very rich people doing very bad things, is what I'll say. It's good.
It's interesting hearing you talk about all the different books and their titles. It makes me think of the title for this book. And I do think Everyone is Watching is a perfect title for your book based on the subject matter, right?
Mm-hmm.
But also the show title, One Lucky Winner, I could also see that being a good title too. So I'm just curious, was the title set from the start? Was it something you had to go through a lot of changes? What was your journey with the title of this novel?
Yeah, titles are hard, especially for me. I really struggle with getting good titles. Actually, the working title for this one for me, as I was writing, was truly awful people,
Mm,
because that so many of the characters were truly awful people. But of course, that didn't quite stick. One Lucky Winner was a working title for a while, but we landed on Everyone Is Watching because it just really encompassed kind of the darkness of that, of, kind of a creepy stalkerish feel to the title, because everyone is watching, but also who's the puppet master behind the scenes of the entire game. They're watching as well, and
yeah, yeah.
moving people into the spots that they want them to go. And so that's the one we landed on. And I think it suits it quite well.
Oh yeah, I agree.
Mhm,
Absolutely. Well, in your acknowledgments at the end of the book,
mhm.
you mentioned that, so this is your 10th novel, first of all. We just need to say
Yeah.
that. But you mentioned in the acknowledgments that this one was different for you and that it sounds like it was maybe a challenge. It was just a very different
Mhm.
kind of a book for you to be working on. Can you talk a bit about that? What do you think it was about this book that made it either a challenge or just a departure for your process with the other
Yeah,
novels?
yeah, and it was a challenge and a departure. I think the number one, uh, most noticeable for those who do read my books is, all my books to date have been set squarely in Iowa,
Mhm.
where I grew up, where I live now. Um, and I create all these fictional towns, this fictional world almost in Iowa, with some very familiar locations nearby. And that's just what I do. And I love writing about my home state in the Midwest. But for this book, it was imperative that I take the characters out of their comfort zones, all of them, including Mare, who is the mom from Iowa, and drop them into an unfamiliar location. So
Mhm.
I needed to set the book somewhere else. So that was a little out of my comfort zone, as I started writing. And also, um, while I often write in multiple perspectives with my books, this cast was very varied, very varied. It was, widely varied in the sense that they came from so many different backgrounds, different locations, and it's a big cast of characters. And so that was new for me. Another piece that was kind of new is like just the over the topness of jumping into social media and, a national syndicated reality show,
Right.
and everything that goes on behind that. So that was new for me. My books tend to be more, I would call them domestic suspense, where it's like more of a close knit kind of community, and characters who are put through some very challenging, dark things. But it just seemed to be on a bigger scope, or a grander, more a grand level, for Everyone Is Watching. So that was different. Um, you know, I think, as writers, we're human too. We have lives, and sadly, as I was writing this book, my dad was diagnosed with cancer, and we followed that whole journey with hospice, and trying to work, and but also be there, very present for family, which is the most important thing. So that was different for me in that sense, trying to juggle that. Um, as well. And just that the book changed so much from first draft to final draft. I think I wrote it, and this isn't unusual for authors, but I feel like I wrote this book a million times,
Mhm.
rewrote it. And, but the good thing is, through that, I didn't want to give up. I had fun writing this book, and I always enjoy writing, but doing this kind of over the top different thing kind of invigorated me in a way, that I could do something different, or something new to me, and really enjoy it. So yes, there were some really challenging moments, but ultimately it was a fun ride. Hopefully, it's a fun ride for the reader as well.
No, absolutely. Yeah, I was really intrigued that you also said in the acknowledgments that the first draft is almost unrecognizable from the final published draft. Can you talk a bit about that? I know it's always hard to try to recount what has changed exactly, but did you start the first draft with an outline? I know you, as you said earlier, you really had to develop things along the way. But yeah, just talk a bit about how what we're reading today in the published final form is so different from the first one, and if there are any lessons in that for other writers out there.
Sure, yeah. So in the writing world, and a lot of people have heard this, there are two types of writers. We have the plotters who plot everything out, they map it out, they make their outlines, very methodical and organized. And we have the pantsers, the writers who write by the seat of their pants. And I am a pantser. And that doesn't always go smoothly, which I found for this book, because there were so many moving pieces with, you know, the characters, the game show, just everything. And so I wrote myself into a lot of sticky corners as I worked, and, you know, what the clues meant and when to you know, because during this competition, these clues start to emerge that the characters gathered, they're trying to solve a bigger puzzle, and so how those all fit in. And so it was really messy, just really messy. And I found that I needed to take a step back, and thankfully I have a wonderful editor who gets me back on track, and she can kind of see that big overview that we all need of a story. But I had characters that just didn't really fit on the page. So there was a house husband. It was a husband from the Northeast who, you know, has this huge secret, and he is very, you know, he was one of the perspectives, but he just didn't come together for me, and I ended up having to ditch him altogether. So he was completely pulled from the book. There was a thread in there where Fern, who's the personal assistant, her mother or grandmother is very involved in the story and the setting and what's going on, and I end up having to pull her because she was just, it wasn't that core group that I needed to have in that more claustrophobic sense of the story where everything's internal. And then so that she was gone, unfortunately. And then you know, several years ago it was big in the news about there were so many wildfires in wine country that were destroying the vineyards. And I had a roaring fire going on in the background as well while all this was happening, the fire closing in. And it was just too much. It was just too much. And so I pulled that out. So and the ending is completely different. And so I think what I learned about myself as a writer, and I knew this, but it really showed itself in the writing of this book. I say I write ugly. I just get everything out on the page and then go back and rake it up and fix it up. And it's not always the most efficient way of writing. So for the book I'm working on now, I outlined it. I took a step back, really outlined, spent a lot of time, and it's helping. But darn it, the characters do what they want anyway. So I've already, I don't know if you find that too, but they've already veered off track.
Right.
And I've added characters, taken some away. But I think what I've learned is that I like the surprises. I like surprising myself as a writer as well. And I think that brings a lot of that joy when, you know, things are tough as a writer, when you're, you know, in the mud and the muck of it. It's fun to surprise yourself and where something's going to go. Do you find that as well?
I'm the same way. I'm a pantser, as they say. I can't really imagine outlining, and it's messy, ugly, as you say, but I wouldn't have it any other way. It's so fun to be surprised, even if it is extremely inefficient. Even though right now I'm rewriting a whole project and I'm just cursing myself. Like, why can't I'm restructuring it for the third time. Like, why can't I figure this out? But, you know, it's a process. So that's interesting that you did for this latest one. You did, you know, have an outline, even if you are still surprising yourself, which sounds like, I know a lot of writers do that as a happy medium. Kind of, they do have an outline, but they're free to go beyond it if they need to.
I think that's key for me. I'll let you know when I'm all done.
Let us know.
See how much revision I
Yeah.
have in the end, but yeah.
Are there any other ways, so as this is your 10th published book, any other ways that either that your process has maybe changed over the years as you've gotten more experienced, or just anything else, if not process, anything you've learned about the business that has, changed over the course of your career?
I think, one thing for me, and it's hard to believe I'm 10 books in. When I started with I think my first 7, 8 books, I was still working as an educator. And so when I was able to, step away from my education world, and my kids have all grown, I thought I'd have like all this time to write more, and I'd get like double the writing done. It did no. I still getting the same amount, and I just was like, okay, there's something that I need to, like, I could dig into that a little bit more. But I also think I think for me that what I've learned most is that when things do get really hard and discouraging, and I stress out that, oh, I'm never going to finish this book, or it's the worst thing I've ever written, or my publisher is going to drop me because, oh my gosh, this is awful. I'm able to tell myself, when I get into these hard situations, these sticky situations, I've been here before.
Yeah.
Stay the course, get in my seat, keep plowing forward. I've been here before. Everything will be okay. And it is, ultimately everything will be okay.
Yeah, it's amazing that 10 books or 20 books probably, or 50 books, and we still as writers we still go through this crisis of confidence, right? Of like, how am I ever going to figure this out? Yeah. Well, and I'll just have one kind of publishing businessy kind of question, and I'll leave it at that. But I also noticed in your acknowledgments that you have had the same agent for all 10 books, which I feel like these days in the publishing industry is becoming slightly more rare. It just seems like agents move around a lot, or relationships ever. So I assume you probably have a really great relationship with your agent. So you can talk about that if you'd like, or more broadly, what you think, in your opinion, makes a good agent-author relationship.
I feel like I just hit gold with my agent. She was the first, her agency was the first I queried when, back when I was a 3rd grade teacher, and I had no idea what the publishing world was. She saw something in my first book that sparked, was a spark for her, and she worked with me, in her own time, to help me get it in good shape and ready to send to publishers. So I just think that she saw something in me that I didn't even see in me at the time, and I will never forget that, ever forget that. And she, we've just really developed this admiration for each other, respect. I trust her so well. So trust is number one. I trust her with my life. She's really smart. She knows the industry. She never leads me astray, and always has my best interest at heart. And I, really come to call her friend now. So I think that's trust, knowing the business, and believing in because no one's going to believe in your book as much as you do, or a project, right? It's your creation. But you want somebody who is going to feel as close to the way you feel about it as you do, right? So she is honest, and always one of my early readers. I adore her. So I think if you can look for that in an agent, and work to find that good fit, and that communication piece is huge. You have to be able to communicate, and advocate for yourself, and have someone advocate for you. And that's really what an agent's job is, to do.
I'm also curious if you have any thoughts, since you write thrillers or suspense,
Mhm.
Are there special skills or considerations that you think writers of those kinds of books should have? Or, what do you think it takes to make a good thriller or
Mm.
suspense writer?
Oh goodness. So, I'm one who thinks, good writing is good writing. But I think what the suspense genre has that can be, a little unique, because I think we want that in all books. We want good writing, we want engaging characters. But I think what suspense heightens is it's that pacing, it's the fast pace where you're moving along, at a clip, and each chapter leaves you with a cliffhanger of sorts and keeps you wanting more. And that heightened sense of danger, the high stakes. So I think those are the main elements, I would say, and oftentimes a ticking clock. You only have so much time, and something's going to happen. Um, but there's so many, amazing thriller writers who are able to do that, and the ones that I really admire the most are the ones who just write so beautifully as well. And so I'm thinking like Laura McHugh. If you've ever read anything by Laura McHugh, she writes so beautifully, but in this dark genre where she just pulls the readers along. And that's something that I'm always striving to do is, oh yes, you want the reader to, like to keep flipping through the pages as fast as you can in a thriller. But I really love it when a reader stops for a second on a
Yeah.
sentence and they're like, admire the sentence, or they pause and think it through a little more. And, I think that makes for the best kind of writing.
Yeah. Now I'm thinking of, since your books are, I mean, I would definitely describe this novel as a page turner, right? It's exciting and you want to find out what happens next. So I'm just curious. I'm sure you hear from a lot of readers who say, I read your book in like one night, or I stayed up all
Mm-hmm.
night to read it. I read it in a day. And when you compare that to, of course, that's a good thing, right? But when you compare it to
Mm-hmm.
how long it takes to write and revise, I'm just curious what your thoughts are
No,
on
it is a good thing. It is a
that.
fabulous thing to hear that,
Yeah.
someone is, flying through the pages. But you're right. And it's, um, I spent well over a year, working on this one, at least. And, um, I try to take it as, that you want the journey through the book to be seamless for the reader, and that takes a skill that I'm continually working on. And there's the nature of thrillers, and these fast-paced reads is that they go through it more quickly. And that's I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that. And my hope is that um, maybe they'll reread again, maybe they'll reread it down the road or pass it on to somebody else who likes that fast paced kind of genre.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I do see a question in the chat, which I will
Mm-hmm.
read. And everyone watching live right now, if you do have a question, this is the time to put it in the chat, because we're going to move on to our final 5 questions soon. But okay, so the question is, will Caitlin Clark, Pride of Iowa, make an appearance in your next book? And there's even what seems to be a little suggestion at the end. Perhaps like there's just a game on in the background of your book. So maybe not that she's a character, but that she's present on the TV. So
I'm writing that down right now. I love it.
good
I
idea.
love it. Yeah, that's a great idea. I'm a huge basketball fan, and Iowa women's basketball, men's basketball. So I think that would be super fun to include that. It'll be an Indiana Pacer or a Fever game. Will be the game that will be on in the background for sure. So that's fun.
Um, and is I know you, whatever you want to share or not share about your next book, is it set in Iowa again? Are you returning to Iowa, or are you
Yeah,
going further afield again?
yeah, this one I'm really excited about. I'm about, a little over halfway done, so it's getting close. It's called The Big Reveal, and while it is once again not set squarely in Iowa, it is Iowa adjacent. There's characters, but for the purpose of the story, I needed to take them far from home. And it's about an over-the-top gender reveal party. So it's called The Big Reveal, and where murder, mayhem occur at this gender reveal party. And we learn about secrets that the characters are hiding, and danger lurking around every corner. And it's been a lot of fun to write.
Secrets and danger. Good time. I have to say,
Yeah.
without giving anything away, I'm still thinking
Mhm.
of the scene in Everyone is Watching where, as part of a challenge, the characters have to put together a jigsaw puzzle,
Mhm.
and each one has a different puzzle, and the puzzles are basically, once they're created, are showing a scene that relates to one of their secrets. And I just thought of how
Yeah.
horrifying that would be, that you don't even know that you're putting together a puzzle on live TV that is going to, like, whether or not all the audience knows what it means, it's still like, to you, you know what it means. And so yeah, just really
Exactly.
chilling detail. Good time.
Yeah, and that's really where most of the contestants begin to realize
Yeah,
this
something's
isn't what
up.
I signed up.
Yeah,
Yeah, this isn't what I signed up for, and who is behind the curtain.
there's something else going on
Mhm.
here.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think we'll move on to a quick final 5 questions, kind
Yep.
of rapid fire questions before we start to wrap up. I tried to tie in some of them to the book. But first one is a writing question. So this is just for fun. It's a silly one that I
Mhm.
just came up with. Would you rather, as a writer, never receive another rejection ever again? Or would you rather be able to write 5 times faster than you currently do?
Oh, I want to write faster.
Same, same. Yeah. Imagine how much you
I,
could get done. It sounds like you're already very prolific, but you could.
oh no, I see some of my, our author friends and colleagues, and I can't, the book a year. I'm not quite there.
Yeah,
That would be amazing. Some can do more than that. No, I would like to be a little more efficient in my writing.
yeah. Okay. If you had to go on a reality TV show tomorrow, you just got dumped onto
Mhm.
one, which one would you want to go on, and how do you think you would do?
Okay, I've actually thought this
Yeah.
through. I wouldn't do well. I would like to say I do Survivor or Alone, but I wouldn't do well. I would
Mhm.
not. I wouldn't last. So it would definitely be a cooking show. I'm going to say Cupcake Wars,
Oh, okay.
something
Are
like
you a big
that.
baker?
I can bake.
Yeah.
I think that's the only one where I wouldn't like potentially hurt myself, or
I don't.
although I
There's
could.
hot ovens and knives. I don't
Yeah,
know.
that's true. That's true.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But I think that would be really fun as well, and maybe like the British baking show, because they're
Oh,
so
that would
kind.
be
They're
fun.
so
Yeah.
kind and gentle on that one, no matter
Yeah.
what.
And just to meet all the other contestants, they always seem like a lovely group of people.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. I'm thinking about it. I mean, I like to cook and bake, but I don't think
Mhm.
I'm great at it. I'm thinking it might be fun to go. What's that show with Nicole Byer? Is it Nailed It? Have you ever seen that?
Oh yeah, yes,
I feel like that would be a low pressure
that
situation.
would be.
How could you make it worse than what they already do?
That's
So,
right.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So, who would you rather form a reality TV style alliance with? And I'm
Mhm.
thinking of your characters in the book. I'm suggesting between Fern and Camille. So maybe between them,
Ooh,
or just in general, who would you want to form an alliance with if you were in the world of your own, or maybe not in
okay.
the world of your novel, but with those people?
Yeah. Okay. So Fern or Camille? So I'm actually going to go with Fern. Fern
Mm-hmm.
is the personal assistant. And I choose her because she does something that is totally uncharacteristic of her early in the book, that we all are like, what just happened? So she's got a little spine and backbone there. But I also think she's a good person, a genuinely good person. And so, but ruthless when she has to be. So
Yes.
that's why I would choose Fern. Camille is more complicated in my mind. I
Yeah.
think she's morally in kind of a gray area. We kind of learn that about her. Not that Fern's not, but it's more deliberate. It's more
Uh-huh.
deliberate and calculated in the way that she is.
Yeah.
So I don't think I turn my back on Camille too much.
Yeah, yeah, I was thinking about this too. I feel like
Mhm,
Camille's really smart, and I like that as
mhm,
a either psychiatrist or psychologist, she would have a lot of
mhm.
insight into people, and that would be helpful. But I would
Yeah.
pick Fern as well because she has that ruthless edge. I feel like if she's really on your side, how could you not?
Mhm.
You wouldn't go with
That's right.
her.
That's
Okay.
right.
Without giving anything away, without giving
Mhm,
any details away, I hope it's all right if I just say that
mhm,
someone gets trapped in a wine cellar at one point in the book.
mhm.
And so I'm wondering if you were trapped in, let's call it a magical wine cellar. So it
Okay.
could be all wine, but it could be any beverage of any kind. What is the first beverage you would go for and why?
Okay. Um, I would do like sparkling water. Just
Yeah,
'cause I know, isn't that terrible? I just because that's what I drink all day long,
yeah,
or just, with lemon or lime, I would pick that because I like the fizz of it.
yeah.
Um, that would be my go-to, I think. Pretty boring.
I think that's smart because if you're trapped in a situation, you don't want to panic or get dehydrated, right?
And alcohol is very dehydrating.
It's very bad, yes, and then you'll
Yeah.
probably get panicked and yeah, I mean, I might though, depending on how distressed I was, go for the champagne, the finest champagne for the bubbles,
Well,
and then
that wouldn't be bad.
not do well for the next day.
Yeah.
Okay, and last question, a much bigger one, but what
Mhm.
is, in your opinion, is the best part of being an author?
Oh gosh, that so many things are wonderful. Um, what's been really, really amazing for me, when I started out, I was an elementary teacher, um, no clue as to what the world of publishing would be like, and just all the lovely people I've met along the way, whether it be, my agent and my editors and industry people, but also fellow authors are the most generous people in the world. I've been really fortunate with that, and like this group of writers who are so supportive. And one of the best things is connecting with readers because, I think first and foremost, we're readers as writers. That's why we fell in love with what we do. And reading is our first love. And anytime I get a chance to talk books with somebody, um, and readers on the road or, online, it's one of my favorite things to do.
Yes, I agree completely.
Hmm.
And I think that is a lovely note to end on. So, Heather,
Yeah.
thank you for joining us. And everyone, again, look, the book is Everyone is Watching. It's really fantastic. And I want to thank everyone who is here watching live, watching and listening. I also want to thank our tech team to make sure this went smoothly. Thanks, Mike. Thank you to MaxBax Books, who has copies of Heather's books, including Everyone is Watching. And finally, a huge thank you to Heather Gudenkauf for joining us this evening. So thank you so much, Heather.
Yeah.
This is Writers Unplugged. Thanks for joining us and happy reading.
Thanks, everyone.